Thank you, Daniel. We are very proud of the outstanding contributions by the Jewish members of the General Assembly. We also are grateful to Daniel for volunteering his cousins to speak at today's program. Every year at this observance, we have been honored to hear from survivors and to draw inspiration from their personal stories of perseverance and renewal, even after unimaginable trauma. Today we are indeed fortunate to have the two sisters to speak with us. First, we will hear from Edith Adlam.
Good morning. Yes, we are Holocaust survivors. Our story is different. We have no numbers tattooed on our arms as most survivors, but our story is well preserved in our minds and our souls. We'll try to describe to you our life during the Holocaust, but because of the time allowed to us, we'll omit some of the details. A little about our background. Our family comes from a small town in Poland, Krynki, near Białystok. Our parents graduated from high schools. When World War I broke out, they left everything behind and ran deep into Russia to be away from the war. This is where Rose and myself were born, in Tver, between Moscow and St. Petersburg. We returned to Poland in 1921 to Lodz, the second largest city in Poland. The trip back to Poland took 4 weeks in deplorable conditions when Rose developed measles, which left her with a severe and dangerous ear problems that never went away. Father was an industrialist, mother a homemaker, both very much involved in civic and charitable organization. Both of us attended and graduated from private high school, as Jews were not accepted in public high schools. I graduated college in Krakow and went to Paris, France, to continue my education. Rose graduated high school in 1939, and soon after, my parents took her to Bordeaux, France, to a world-famous surgeon to perform a very delicate and dangerous ear surgery that could not be done in Poland. The surgery went fine, and our parents returned home to Poland on August 21st with the understanding that we would follow in 2 weeks with doctor's permission. We went to Paris to see the doctor once more and to continue home. This was not possible. No more seats on trains, not even on planes. We were notified that there was 1 seat available on the train, so we decided to go with one of us sitting or standing. We were ready, our suitcases in hand. Rose had a bandage on her head when suddenly a friend of mine walked in, and when we told him we were going home to Poland, he blocked the doorway with both arms. "I will not let you go. I just came with the last train. Its windows were broken. The Germans were throwing stones in the windows. And you, Rose, the Germans will remove your bandages." The train never reached Lodz. We were safe this time. We got stuck in France with hardly any money to our name. The news from home was very rare and not too good. I got a job through the recommendation of the surgeon that did the surgery. Rose had a lot of recuperation ahead. We met other Jews from Poland, also stranded. Rose's hobby at home growing up was sewing. She found a school of design that when the owner heard her story, let her come a few days a week to study design free of charge. Pretty soon, she got a client assigned to her and she got paid for her work. How she ran to me with the first earned money. Now she could help. In November 1939, we received a telegram through the Red Cross with names of family members. 2 names of uncles were missing. It meant that they were not alive anymore. Also in November 1939, while in Bordeaux, we registered with the American consulate for an immigration visa to the United States because Eda and Kurt Biss, our dearest first cousins, the grandparents of Daniel Biss, were already in the United States, and Eda and Kurt promised our parents that they would take care of us. Rose tried to help a young woman, one of the stranded people from Krakow, who was afraid to stay alone. Rose volunteered to stay overnight with her. In the early morning, the bombing started, and Rose and I were separated and worrying about each other. We started running through the street between the bombs. We fell into each other's arms sobbing. A miracle that we were not hit. One day, as we approached our residence, there were 2 soldiers in Polish army uniforms with a car. One of them was the brother of the lady Rose tried to help out, suggesting we join the family in Biarritz because the German army was 50 kilometers from Bordeaux. We hesitated but did join them. Biarritz was a harbor city, and we tried to catch a boat to Africa, to any place to leave France, but we were not successful. The Polish soldiers suggested to try to settle in Bolen, in Vaucluse, in southern France, as the Polish army was stationed there, and the people there were very nice to them. There were 2 cars for 2 families, 2 drivers, but needed 1 person speaking French. Since my French was good, we were asked to join them. We were with the Sapir family and arrived safely in Bolen, and with the Sappers rented half of the house from the French family, the best, very nice people and very helpful. We knew that the situation in Poland was bad, but we did not imagine how bad it was. Neither did we expect what was awaiting us. I suffered an appendicitis attack and had to undergo surgery in the next village. On return from the hospital, there were rumors that under German instructions, French police were to arrest Jews who came to France after 1936. As a precaution, Rose went back to the surgeon who operated on me, explained the reason for her coming, and he wrote a certificate that I should not be moved. People in the village of Bolen were very friendly. Even the police were friendly. But on August 26, 1942, about 2:30 a.m., the dogs started barking and the doorbell was very loud. The gendarmes had an order issued by the governor's office in Avignon to arrest all of us for deportation. A copy of that order is now on display at the Illinois Holocaust Museum and Education Center in Scotland. Our landlady, Mrs. Deves, realized the situation. She pushed Rose and the sappier's daughter, about Rose's age, into her bedroom and locked the door. To open the door, the gendarmes would need a search warrant. Mrs. Sapir, the mother of the family, threw herself on the floor, seemingly screaming from pain, but rather than screaming in Jewish, gave us instructions what to do. The gendarmes didn't know how to handle the situation, and they called for a local doctor who arrived promptly. The physician, a woman, sized up the situation, and after reading the surgeon's certificate, declared that Mrs. Sapir and I must go to the hospital immediately. The gendarmes took the young Sapir's son, 16 years old, who eventually escaped from Camp de Mille and went into hiding until liberation. Rose and Esther got help from the farmer, where I pulled weeds, and the three of us girls picked grapes for weeks. She offered to hide them in her home. Dressed as boys on bicycles, Rose and Esther made the trip to her farm, with neighbors standing guard every few miles. They were well guarded in the room above the kitchen. When someone approached the farm, Madame Mazur would call her cat, Minou, Minou, to warn them not to move. They were given books to read, and once when they were warned not to move and were reading on the bed, Rose dozed off and the book fell out of her hand. A gendarme was in the kitchen buying some produce from the farmer, looked up with a question on his face. Madame Mazur looked up and said, "Oh, that darn cat always knocks off the figurine when I have a figurine I have on the mantel of my fireplace." Rose was saved again. Madame de West was a courier between me and in the hospital and Rose on the farm. They were on the farm for a couple of weeks, but they could not stay there forever. Mr. Spear, the head of the family, was in Marseille trying to find someone to get all of us out of France to Spain. He found a young man who supposedly was a guard at Camp de Rivesaltes near Perpignan, a city near the Spanish border, who also belonged to the French resistance and who for some money volunteered to take us out. The guard came to Boulogne. One of the prominent citizens offered to pick up Rose and Esther from the farm, with the guard sitting in the car and a blanket over their bodies, drove them out of the village to a railroad station not a long distance away, where Mrs. Sapir and I waited for them. We were all overjoyed, but couldn't show it, because after all, we were with a guard, presumably as his prisoners. He didn't have to worry about losing us. We didn't want to lose him. We had no valid ID papers, but arrived safely in Perpignan. For several days, we were hidden in around one room with 6 people. We were assigned a Spanish guide who kept on delaying the crossing, stating that his man was not on the border. The little kitchen leading to our room, the entrance to the room was from the street, but the entrance was boarded up. The little kitchen leading to our room had on one side a big mirror, on the exterior side a bookcase, just like Anne Frank. We were supposed to be picked up to cross the mountain that day. There was a little tap on the bookcase. I moved the mirror, hoping to see the guide. 2 policemen, French gendarmes, with pistols in both hands, said to me, "Don't move or we shoot." They marched us through the city like real criminals, all the way to the jail. We were interrogated separately. Edith and I were put together in one cell with 2 prostitutes. We looked at each other and said to each other, "What would our parents say?" As it turned out, our stay in the jail was rather a blessing, because while we were in the jail, the camps where we were taken to, Count the result, was emptied of women and children and taken to Camp Drancy near Paris and never heard from again. The conditions in the camp were very bad. Very little to eat. The soup was water with wormy beans, 1 teaspoon of sugar, a slice of bread made like with clay. We slept on straw mattresses with dirty blankets. The outhouse was in open stalls in quite a distance from the barracks, and our files were marked good for deportation. After about a month, we were transferred by bus to another camp, Camp de Gus, that is well known. We were fed frozen potatoes, rotten frozen eggs. When you are starving, you eat about anything. Edith got a terrible case of diarrhea. Of course, no washroom on the bus. The driver refused to stop the bus so that she could get off and relieve herself. It took a whole busload of women to yell and holler for him to stop the bus, and the guard went down with her. As we finally arrived to Camp de Gus, Edith was put in a makeshift infirmary. We were separated, and this was very stressful for both of us. We just didn't trust the authorities. By now it was October. Days and nights were getting cold. The wind blew through the shingles of the barracks. We had to wait for the water outside to defrost in the only outdoor faucet for cold water to get washed. We were determined, Edith and I, to keep clean every day as much as we could. We had no warm clothes. We were separated from the men by a cyclone fence and were not allowed to circulate between the sections. Edith was made to work in the camp office, so she had a pink card and she was permitted to circulate. She worked as a typist, typed lists of people entering or leaving the camp for deportation. While typing, she came across the name of a young man, a son of our father's partner, who at the time was studying in Toulouse, France. He was denounced as an underground resistance worker. Edith could not save him. He was deported, and no one ever heard from him. When the inmates were loaded on trucks of no return, Edith was with the young man saying goodbye, and I was with Mr. Sapir, head of our adopted family. Mr. Sapir took off his wedding ring and his golden watch, handed it to me, and said, "Give it to my wife." I promised, and eventually I did it. But how naive I was. I thought, how can a man go on a trip without a watch? I took off my little watch that my parents bought for me and put it on his wrist. And with this, he left, and we never heard from him either. The SS were all over the camp, and it was very frightening. Rumors started to circulate that the Americans landed. As we were on a farm in the mountains, we heard, oh, I must have missed a page. Forgive me, too emotional. In the spring of 1943, there was a rumor that they might close the camp. Madame Deves, our landlady from Berlin, went to the governor of Vaucluse, assured him that she will take full responsibility of us and that we won't be the burden for the government. So in April 1943, we were released from the camp and went back to Berlin. The German SS were still in and around Berlin. We couldn't sleep where we used to. Mr. Deves, whose house we lived, carved an exit in the wall of his property that hugged the mountains behind the house in case we had to run. The mailman came many times on his bike, warned us that the Germans were aiming in the direction of our house, warning us we should hide. In August 1944, the Germans were retreating, passing by the house, the same route they retreated in World War I toward Italy, where they robbed, killed, raped, whoever was in their way. Mrs. Deves said we must run to a farm in the mountains. The men in the family were hiding already. As we prepared to leave the house, the 5 of us women, the bell rang. 2 Germans pointing the gun at Edith, demanding bicycle wheels. If we denied that we had and they would find them, they would kill Edith. Fortunately, they were in such a hurry they didn't look up. There, from the ceiling, was hanging a wagon with 4 bicycle wheels. Edith was spared again. Rumors started to circulate that the Americans landed. As we were on a farm in the mountains, we heard church bells and saw fires that looked like fires behind the Deves house where the generations of the Deves family lived for 200 years. We were all frightened. Madame Deves and Esther jumped on their bikes and started pedaling back. The church bells got louder and louder. The American in 2 tanks were the entrance of the village. Everybody started running down, everybody who was hiding in farms, mountains, men, women, young, old. One of the prominent citizens was bicycling towards us and shouting, "Where is Mademoiselle Edith?" When I asked, "Why is he looking for her?" he answered, "Edith is the only one in the village who could speak English." We ran towards the 2 tanks. We felt exhilarated to see the Americans. We felt free. Word got to us that the American headquarters in Marseille are hiring civilian employees, that the GIs were needed at the front. We got a ride with 2 GIs who were going to Marseille for supplies to the headquarters. Edith applied for the job and was hired on the spot. 2 weeks later, Edith came with someone from the office to pick me. I got a job too. We had to move a few times and finally got a room at a very nice lady, a widow, Madame Menadier. Life started to look sort of normal. We were both working at the American headquarters. The GIs were very nice to civilian girls, especially to us. Being surrounded by English-speaking GIs, it was easy for me, knowing German and French, to start speaking English. The officer in charge would provide us with a jeep and a driver when we were going home after work and it was dark outside. We could calm down finally, but we couldn't. What happened to our parents? What happened to the whole beautiful family? We tried to look wherever they had a list of survivors, or group of children found, or list of people who perished. We couldn't find any trace of anybody. We just worked and bided the time. One of the GIs in the office asked me for a date one day. I accepted. He was a nice, polite young man from Chicago. Eventually, some months later, he asked Edith for my hand. We were married August 22nd, 1945, and the rest is history. Edith came to the United States as an immigrant on March 12, 1946, with an affidavit from our cousins, the grandparents of Daniel Biss. I came to the United States as a war bride on March 22nd, 1946. We never heard about the fate of our parents and the rest of the family, except of one aunt and her son who were shipped to Russian Siberia or were brought to the United States in 1947. Thank you for listening to our story. It's not a happy one, but it needs to be told and retold and repeated, because even now there is so much hate, intolerance, prejudice, and anti-Semitism. Please, the world could be such a beautiful place to live on, if not the religious and racial and social discrimination. Thank you.